Hi, I'm Carol Jurgensen Sheets, aka Carol the Coach, and I have made it my mission to help couples who have experienced sexual betrayal. And you may know me from Help or Heal. That's an empathy workbook that sex addicts can use to help their partners heal. Or perhaps you know me from the partner's perspective because I wrote Unleashing Your Power with my good friend, Christine Turrell Shields. And together we created an empowerment manual, if you will, to help move our partners through the three phases of partner betrayal. Well, after I did those two things, I thought, Carol, you have fallen short because you've got to help couples who are experiencing any kind of problematic sexual behavior to heal the relationship by standing by the hearts, the minds, and the bodies of partners and helping them to go through those three phases. And then I realized that I started getting a lot of clients that said they were sex addicts, but they weren't. They suffered from infidelity. And I realized that I needed to be able to help the general public distinguish between what is compulsive problematic sexual behavior, AKA, we used to call it sex addiction, and what is infidelity? Because oftentimes they look exactly alike. And then there are other times when they look very, very different. And so I thought I would allow this video to show you some of the differences so you could determine what to do. I mean, the truth is that I've just written a new book, and it is called Helping Couples Heal and Find Love Again, because I do believe that can happen. And what I know is that, again, anybody can get through this issue, be it a male partner, a female partner, be it a homosexual couple, a heterosexual couple. ERCM, the Early Recovery Couples Empathy Model, helps couples to heal because they include both people from the get-go. But for today's video, I just wanted you to know some of the differences between infidelity and compulsive problematic sexual behavior disorder. You know, because they overlap, it gets a bit tricky. With infidelity, one needs to focus more on the self-esteem of the betrayer, as well as the attachment issues that have occurred in the relationship. I mean, then I look at attachment issues of the affair partner or the attachment issues to pornography that may actually be a betrayer's best friend. But I really want to look at those two areas because they are very different. You see, with compulsive sexual behavioral disorder, the addiction, if you will, gets worse and worse and worse. And the person literally can't stop. They can't stop using whatever that is. Massage parlors, prostitutes, pornography, web chats. But with infidelity, the betrayer has more than likely been caught off guard by either an emotional affair that starts very harmlessly. It's two people that find some compatibility and start talking about things. And then they cross boundaries. Each person is able to stop. There is nothing in their brain that is providing the kind of dopamine where compulsivity gets greater and greater and greater. However, the dopamine hit that occurs in infidelity feels so doggone nice that neither one wants to stop. And the relationship typically is very romantic once it becomes a full-fledged affair. Now, the reality is that that dopamine hit very quickly subsides. And both the affair partner and the betrayer recognize they've got to ramp up the relationship to get that back. But in today's world, with it being so busy and so hectic, that's very difficult to do. So oftentimes you have the betrayer who says, what did I get myself into? Now I'm juggling two relationships, and this does not feel fun anymore. It doesn't feel romantic. It doesn't feel exciting. It doesn't boost my self-esteem, and it doesn't create that attachment I thought I was going to get. And then the betrayer is perplexed as to how to break that off. Now, I know that there's plenty of affairs that have occurred for months and even years. And I know that there are men and women that get caught up in serial affairs. That's when the behavior starts looking more like compulsive problematic sexual behavior, sex addiction, and less like infidelity. However, my book, Helping Couples Heal and Find Love Again, really shows you a system that teaches you both how do you reconnect? How do you build that self-esteem in each other? How do you increase safety when after an affair is discovered, there is no safety? And I know that almost seems impossible, but so many of the men and women that have had affairs have said to me, this only had to happen once because after it happened once, I realized that my fantasy, which is also very much part of an affair, did not end up the way I'd hoped it would. And fantasy is another natural ingredient in infidelity. Now, there's fantasy in problematic sexual behavior, but in essence, what we know to be true is that fantasy turns into obsession, whereas with infidelity, the fantasy stops. We know that infidelity is a specific act of unfaithfulness within the relationship. And a lot of deception has to occur to keep it perpetuated. And of course, with the deception comes the lying and the stories and the excuses. But really, we're dealing with someone who, in the midst of his or her affair, is unhappy with him or herself, possibly with the relationship, although it's not your fault. I say that because in a marriage, it's always two people that have the issues. Partner, when you choose to have an affair, then you're not being honest. And without honesty, nobody can work on anything. And that's why discovery or a confession or even extortion can help to bring everything to light. And then an Irkham therapist or coach can help look at the inner satisfaction and have the betrayer talk about what he or she needed in the relationship. This is not to place blame on the spouse. This is to heal some inner wounds that betrayer had. And, you know, when there's a connection with your husband or your wife, there's oxytocin that's produced, which is very different than dopamine. That dopamine rush was something that the betrayer got right off the bat. But as I said earlier, that dopamine is not sustainable. So the other thing about infidelity is that it is not driven by sexuality. It's driven by a woundedness, a psychological need that we can work with in early recovery couples work. So that's the good news. I want you to know that infidelity absolutely can be repaired with early recovery couples empathy work. And that's what's in this book that's going to teach you how to help your relationship heal. It's going to ask the betrayer to do the majority of the work. And ultimately, so many of the betrayers that I have worked with, they want to make an amends. They want to do it right. They hate themselves for having done this to you. And they're looking for a therapist or a coach that can help them not right the wrongs, because that's impossible, but to make an amends so that a new relationship can build and form, promising you that the two of you can be stronger, way stronger than you ever were. Now, how do you get there? You call an IRCM specialist. And if you go to www.sexhelpwithcarolthecoach.com, it'll turn into Help Them Heal, and then look for the Infidelity tab. That's where you can buy this book, or you can go to Amazon and find an IRCM specialist who can walk you through this process. Now, remember, I said that although affairs are not necessarily indicative of a relational problem, oftentimes the relational issues and challenges were the justification and the rationalization for what happened when an affair became stronger and stronger. We know that affairs can come out of boredom, distress, intolerance. There can be other situational issues like working late, working out of town, losing a job. And then the all important ability to talk with each other, to express the 6 very important needs: emotional, physical, social, intellectual, spiritual, and purposeful. Communication is key to developing good relational skills. Oftentimes, affairs occur because somebody outside of the marriage pursued your spouse. And so, boundary setting and circumstantial and situational assessments, keeping people out of harm's way, needs to occur through the therapy, or what we call early recovery couples work, so that you don't put yourself in a situation where this could occur again. You know, if I've got a man or a woman who works in the entertainment business, you better be sure that we're going to be talking about the potentiality for the other spouse to travel with him or her. Or we may talk about how to proceed limiting the amount of hours that are spent, the travel that occurs, and the months of time that go into making a television series, a movie. So I hope I've done a good job of explaining the difference between compulsive sexual behavior disorder and infidelity. The good news is that there are programs for both of you. There is support. And in my book, I talk about what those are. And remember, most betrayers, once they get out of the fog of the romance, of the attachment, of the rush of romance, they end up being in a situation where they're sick to their stomach and they wonder how they can get out. I'm Carol Jurgensen Sheets, aka Carol the Coach. If you want to contact me, you can reach me at carol@carolthecoach.com. And more importantly, I want to be your beacon of hope. You can get through this together. We can get you the right support, and I can walk with you every step of the way. Not only that, but I have 250 people that I have trained to do this work across the world. And you can grow stronger together, and you can find a purpose and a meaning to this horrible mess. You can treasure the new memories that you're going to make as you form a secure attachment.